video. In this video, I'm going to show you how to build a circle graph. A circle graph is sometimes known as a pie chart. It's the one that looks like a circle and has different slices in it. Okay, so we're going to learn how to build one of those accurately. You can see I've gone back to my low-tech setup, and that's because I'm going to show you specifically how to do it using some geometry tools. So what are you going to need for this? You are going to need your frequency table that you've done or completed. And you can see that I've added a new column to it. I'm going to explain what that is soon. You're also going to need a ruler, a protractor, and a compass. So with all that next to you and near you, the first thing we need to do is add a different column and explain what this column degree means. Well, like we've already learned in our lines and angles and triangles units, we know that a circle has a total of 360 degrees in it, in a complete circle. We know that half of a circle has 180 degrees because a straight line makes 180 degrees. And that means that if we have two half circles, I know that's not really much of a circle, but you get the idea, and added those two up together, we would get a total of 360 degrees. Okay? We also know how to calculate a decimal and how to calculate a percentage of our frequency. And we were told that decimals and percentages show us how many parts out of the whole that we have. So in this case, I have 80 participants in my survey, and for example, the number of participants that like comedy is 26%, or 21 out of 80 people prefer comedy as their favorite movie genre. What I need to determine before I start making a circle graph is how big each slice of my circle is each category going to be. And the way to do that is actually by creating separate angles. Okay, so each one of these slices is going to have a certain angle to it that when I add them all up is going to add up to 360 degrees. So we know right away that our total should be 360 degrees because that's one full circle. But how do I figure out the parts? Well, that's pretty simple. What I'm going to do is take the decimal of each category, and instead of multiplying it by 100 to get a percentage, I'm going to multiply it by 360 to see what part of 360 degrees is each category. So the first one I'm going to do is 0.163. 0.163 times 360. I should have mentioned that you're also going to need a calculator for this, unless you're some kind of mathematical genius and can figure this out in your head. We want to be accurate though. Mr. Lachance is going to use a calculator. And I get 58.68 degrees. I'm going to do the same thing for all of these different categories. So I've added up, or I've multiplied each one of my decimals by 360 to figure out what part or how many degrees of my circle is each category of my frequency table. The next step is to actually build the circle graph. But before I do, I want to double check that I got my numbers correctly. Like I said before, we know that all of these degrees should add up to roughly 360, or very, very close to it, because all of these together add up to one full circle. So let's add these numbers up to make sure I didn't make any mistakes. When I add all these numbers up, I get to 358.6 degrees. Okay, Mr. Lachance, that's not 360, so what's going on here? Well, if you remember, we rounded some of these numbers in our decimals. If you rounded your numbers somewhere in your decimal, because it was such a long decimal that you wanted to cut it down to 2 or 3 decimal places, that means your degrees are also going to be rounded, which means they're not going to add up to a perfect 360. But you can see that I'm within 2 degrees of 360 degrees, and that's good enough for me. Okay? So as long as you're relatively close, either a little bit above or a little bit below, you're good. Okay, my next step, build a circle graph. So I'm going to keep this on the side because I'm going to need this to reference from. And I'm going to take my compass. Now, if you're not experienced with a compass, it would be a very good idea to get some experience by just drawing some circles. But I'm just going to eyeball one circle, making sure I don't go into my title here. I'm going to open it up, and I'm going to draw a nice big circle so that it's very visible for all of us to see. I like to go in different arcs. I don't try and draw a full circle. Some people like to turn the page. That's fine too. And there's my circle. The other thing I'm going to need, and what's really nice about using a compass, is that it tells you where the exact center of a circle is, right? So I'm going to need to just put a little dot where my needle was so that I know where the center of my circle is. Okay. So step one to building a circle graph is I need to create a line to start with. So I'm going to grab my ruler, and it really doesn't matter where I position this line. As long as it goes from the center to one edge of your circle, it doesn't matter where it is. So I'm going to do it at just some random angle like this. I'm not measuring, I'm just drawing a line to start. The next thing that I need to do does matter. I need to take my protractor, and I'm going to create an angle. And just like we just found out, the first angle that I'm going to create is going to be 58.68 degrees. Now, you're not going to be able to get 0.68 of a degree on a little protractor like this. Don't worry. Do your best to get 58 degrees. Okay, so if you remember how to use your protractor, you're going to line up your 0 line on the 0 line that you've created, and the bullseye of your protractor is going to go right on the center of your circle. Next up, I'm going to measure 58 degrees from 0. So for me, that's the inside set of numbers. Here's 50, here's 60, 55 is here, and here's 58. And my little trick that I like to do is I don't lift the pencil now. I don't make a mark and then lift my pencil. I keep my pencil where it is. And then I use the straight edge of my protractor and line that up with the center of my circle and the edge of my circle. And then I can draw in a segment. And here is our first sector. This is a piece of a circle. It's our first slice. And right away, so that I don't forget, I'm going to draw or write in what this slice is. This angle measures 58 degrees. I don't need to make sure that I write 58 degrees. I'm just going to write the category, and I'm also going to write the percentage. Great. Now it's just going to be a matter of me going around the circle and completing it. So I can actually choose at this point which way I want to continue my circle. I have to fill in all these other slices. I'm going to start by going around this way, which means that this new line that I just created is going to be the 0 line that I'm going to line up my protractor with. So the one thing that students make the mistake of doing is that when they start their second sector or second segment, they go back to their original line and then they start measuring inside of it. That's no good. The new line that you created becomes your new 0 point because that's where you're starting the next slice or sector of your circle. So my next slice measures 94 degrees, so this is going to be 0. And here's 90, and so 94 is right here. Again, I'm going from the edge of my circle to the center of my circle, butting up that straight edge and making a mark. That represents comedy, so I'm going to write in comedy, and that is 94 point, sorry, not 94, that is 26.2 degrees. 26.2%, excuse me. So we got horror, comedy. I'm just going to continue now and fill in the rest of my circle. So again, what I find useful is actually turning the circle so that I'm using the 0 line that I need to start with and turning it towards me. Drama is my next category. That represents 32 degrees. So I find 30. Here's 32. I'm going to speed up a little bit now. So this segment is drama. And drama represents 9%. Back and forth. Line up on the 0 line. Make sure I'm at 0 here. My next category is action. That's 63 degrees. This is action. I'm going to turn my paper around so that I can write in action in the right direction. Action represents 17.5% of my circle. Next one is rom-com. Rom-com is 36 degrees, so here's 35, here's 36. And before I write this in so I don't have to turn around again, I'll tell you what's next. The last category is science fiction. And what's nice about a circle graph is I don't actually have to draw that last category, because by making the second to last one, the last one is already completed. But it is good practice to double check. So I know that sci-fi, which is my last category, should be 74 degrees. So let me double check how close I got to 74. So I'm at 76. So I'm 2 degrees off. That's fine with me. That makes sense as well, because I was about 2 degrees off when I was trying to add up to 360. So that's okay. So I'm just going to fill in the rest. Rom-com, which represents 10%, and sci-fi, which represents 21.2%. Now, I'm not done. This is the title of the video, but I want to create a title for my graph, right? And the title of my graph should be the same as any other title. This is showing me Hadley and Filmon students favorite movie genres. So things to keep in mind for a circle graph: show your categories inside of the slices, show your percentages as well, make sure you have a title for your entire graph, and it's always a good thing to double check that you've done things right. So double check your angles, go back with your protractor and measure each one to make sure you didn't make a mistake. As well, you can look to see, does this look to be about 26% of a circle? And if I turn it this way, it does, right? This looks to be just over 1/4 of a circle, which would be 25%. So I know that I'm on the right track, especially for this one. Rom-com and drama, this is 9% and this is 10%. So they're roughly the same size, with drama being just a little bit smaller. And that makes sense because the percentages are very close. Same idea with comedy and sci-fi. Sci-fi is slightly less than comedy, and in percentage-wise, that's also true, 21 versus 26. So that's a quick way that you can double-check your work and make sure that you were on the right track as you did this. I hope you have enjoyed this video. Feel free to leave a comment or ask your teacher any questions that you might have.